Let's talk about some good interviewing practices. Behaviors that will help you make the participant feel comfortable and also that will help you get the best quality and the most detailed information that you can. The first very important rule of good interviewing is letting the informant speak at his or her own pace. Some people are very fast talkers and they talk more or less in sort of a stream of consciousness. Words just keep flowing out of their minds. Some other people like to take their time, they like to pause, they like to deliberate about what they want to say. And a very common rookie mistake, something that many new interviewers make, is with the people who are very deliberative like this, people who like to take time and think, is to jump in when that silence moment happens, when the person is thinking about what to say, and move on with another question. One reason we do this is because most of us are very uncomfortable with silence. For some reason, it is very threatening to us to be quiet with another person, especially if we don't know them well. But silence can be very useful, and sometimes that is what is needed for a person to produce good response. So I want to tell you a story about my colleague in my first job when I came to the United States. My first job was working in an office of a language school in Tucson, Arizona. And I was in charge of running the office, but also selling language classes to people that came in. And I worked at a similar position as another woman. Her name was Kathy, and she had been there a little bit longer. Kathy was a very nice, fairly unremarkable person, but there was one thing that really caught my attention about her, and that was that Kathy made a lot of money selling classes because we get commission, and she was able to sell a lot more classes than anybody else in the office. And I started wondering, well, what is her secret? Because she didn't appear to be particularly, flamboyant or outgoing or any of that. So I started watching how Kathy interacted with with people that came into the office and asked about language classes, and I discovered that she used one particular behavior. Kathy would listen to whatever response the person was giving her, and then when the person was done talking, she would wait without saying anything for a few more seconds. Like this. Just being attentive, appearing interested, being interested in what the person had to say. So guess what happened when she did this? A lot of people wanted to fill in that gap, that silent moment that she created. And so they usually said more, they divulged information about themselves, they disclosed things that they had not been willing initially to disclose. And so she ended up collecting a lot of information about people just by this little trick. And an incredible thing happens when you share information about yourself with somebody else. You kind of feel attached to this person. If you notice, people that we find most attractive, most respectable, most admirable are people who have these powerful listening skills, who make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. And I think that's what Kathy was doing by adding her few seconds of silence, never interrupting the person she was talking to. And so people ended up, including me, we ended up divulging a lot of personal details about our lives, telling Kathy a lot of stories. And so when a person felt such personal connection with her, they were also more willing to purchase classes from her. So this is an example from the sales field, but you can use the same principle with information and just become more comfortable with silence. People, when you give them the space, when you're not trying to jump in. The next really important practice that you need to use when you interview people, because otherwise you will not get all of the information you need, is probing. Sometimes people just don't know what to tell you. They're not exactly sure what it is you want to know, and they're not sure if they have given you enough information. So probing, asking for more information, gives this person signal that you are not done listening, that you are not satisfied yet with what they have told you. And more often than not, once a person has agreed to be interviewed by you, they will be also willing to give you information. So don't be afraid to probe. Ask for additional information. And the basic thing you can do, of course, is to ask follow-up questions. Follow-up questions are simply additional questions that you ask. Oftentimes, these questions are not necessarily in your interview protocol, but you kind of come up with them as you're interviewing the person. For instance, recently I interviewed one of my colleagues, Dr. Mary Braz, who told me about a very interesting study experiment that she conducted with her colleagues at Michigan State University that involved observing college men, how they behaved in men's bathrooms. And I know it sounds quite wacky. It's actually a fascinating study, and you can hear about this in a video interview that I will post on the website. And of course, one thing that came up to my mind when you're doing something so controversial, when you're doing an experiment that involves, observing people's behavior around one of the most intimate behaviors that they can engage in, things are bound to go wrong, things are bound to backfire against you. And I became curious and whether there were things that were unexpected in that situation. So I followed up, I probed, and I asked her a follow-up question, even though you have seen my interview protocol, and I don't have a question particularly asking whether something went wrong in a study. So this is a basic thing you can do, and follow-up questions typically come up spontaneously as you are listening to a person talking. Sometimes this also helps an individual provide a better answer because they're not sure how to answer, or they not quite understand what you ask them. So don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions. Another very simple technique is asking the person to tell you more about a given topic they have been discussing. Can you tell me more about this? Could you speak some more about this or that? And this does not direct the person into any particular thing that they should be talking about within the topic. They have a choice of what they want to say. So you can use the tell me more technique if you're not quite sure what you want to learn, but you want to learn just generally more. And my favorite approach is nonverbal signals. Nonverbal signals are any kinds of behaviors you use that do not involve words. So some very common behaviors may involve your posture, changing your body posture, moving closer or leaning over to a person to indicate that you are really interested in what they're saying and you want to hear more. If you look at this cartoon right here, the postures of both of these men are kind of laid back and not something that I would call a probing posture. This man is leaning back. He is shielding himself with his hand, and he's sitting sort of at an angle to this man. So he clearly seems to be distancing himself from him. If he were an interviewer, which is kind of hard to tell in this picture who is the interviewer, but if he were the interviewer, he would probably not get a lot of good information from this guy, because he's saying with his body, hey, I'm not really interested in what you're saying, and in fact, I'm kind of doubting what you're saying here. So not a very good probing posture. Same thing with this man. He's at least tilted toward his interaction partner. His legs are crossed, and that might signal a little bit of a distance. He is also leaning back in his chair, which again distances him a little bit from this man. although he seems to be leaning closer to his right side, which brings him closer to this guy. But again, it's not a typical probing posture. A probing posture is someone who is sitting upright, legs uncrossed, leaning over. If you have a little table or your notes, you may be leaning over your notes, facing the person directly. And then there are all kinds of facial expressions that you can make. And these facial expressions may be all you need to do to signal to the person that you are looking for more information. So you can do things like tilt your head a little bit, or you can raise your eyebrows in surprise and kind of give the person a quizzical look, or you can furrow your brow and tilt your head a little bit again. So do all those things that signal that, oh, I'm interested, or I don't understand, or I want more information. And if you combine this with the body posture that is kind of engaged, that invites interaction, that doesn't create any barriers between you and the person you're talking to, sometimes that's all you need to do to elicit more information. And nonverbal probing can be really, really fun. Try it out in your next conversation that you have with someone and see how it works. The next important practice that really can make or break an interview are transitions. You may have learned in public speaking that transitions are key to good organization of a speech or presentation. And if you don't have good transitions, your presentation seems choppy, people can get lost, and so it isn't the glue that holds together the presentations. In addition to that, transitions in an interview are very important because of the kind of relationship and rapport they help you build with your participant. I want to show you an example of a little snippet from an interview where the interviewer is trying to change the subject. So the informant has been talking for a while about the social activities that he and his employees engage in. And this is what the informant says. I really like these social gatherings. I feel they really bring out the company culture. To which the interviewer says, okay, tell me about the types of working meetings you hold with your employees. Now, if you were this informant, how would you feel if somebody changed this subject this way? I would feel completely ignored and disregarded, and I would feel that what I have just spent time saying isn't really valuable to the interviewer. So a good transition is something that helps you not only change the subject smoothly, but also it helps you show the interviewee that you have been paying attention and that you respect this person. So you can do it in a number of different things. The simplest thing you could say is, it's very interesting and valuable what you're saying about the social gatherings, and I would be curious to also learn about what your interactions are like during working meetings, if there are any similarities or differences. So something that is going to help weave these two topics together and will help you change the subject without making the interviewee feel like they are unimportant and like what they said doesn't matter. Everything an interviewee says matters, and you should be able to show it to them. The next important practice is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is simply restating what a person has just said in your own words. So if somebody says, so I feel that going to Westchester University gives me the opportunities to explore different subjects and to learn where I'm really at and what my interests are. And I feel that after school, I will kind of know what I want to do. In response to this, you can say something like this. So it looks like Westchester has helped you guide your decisions about your future. Now, think for a moment what that does to the interview. It helps you make sure that you understood what the person is saying and they are given a chance to confirm what whether what you think is right. But another important thing is that, once again, paraphrasing, just like transitions, is an important rapport building tool. It makes the interviewee feel appreciated and understood, and demonstrates to the informant that you have been paying attention. And if a person feels like they are being heard, this person is even more willing to give you further information and to collaborate with you. So occasionally, from time to time, you don't have to do this with every single thing that the person says to you, but from time to time, especially after the informant has given you a large block of information, summarize it, paraphrase it, and this will also typically make the person feel good. They will appreciate, you'll see a smile, a positive response, an eager nod. They will feel that what you are gleaning from what they're saying is important. And the last important thing to keep in mind, this is sort of a general global good practice of interviewing, is remember that any kind of interview you do will almost never go as planned. Typically, it doesn't go as planned because the informant doesn't always want to talk exactly about what you want to ask them about. They have stuff that they care about, they want to get off their chest. And if it is remotely related to what you're asking, they will press on saying that thing or talking about that subject. So sometimes you need to let people get things off their chest. You need to let people say what they want to say. And so basically adapt to what their needs are. Of course, you still have to try and stay in control and try and steer people back on the topic of your conversation using skillful transitions, using paraphrasing, showing that you're interested, probing. But ultimately, don't ever try to coerce the participant into any kind of specific answer, because this only frustrates people. You have to be very gentle and subtle in doing this, and basically adapt to what the participant is saying to you. Adaptation also oftentimes takes the nonverbal form. It is very useful to use the practice of mirroring, that is, kind of copying the posture that your participant is adopting, especially if it is an open posture. If the participant leans forward to you, you should lean forward as well. Don't copy any blocking or distancing postures like crossing your arms, crossing your legs, leaning away, because that will send a signal that you are not interested in what the person is saying. But copy all of the inviting behaviors on the part of the participants. Sometimes even modulating your voice and the way you talk to how the participant is speaking is also a nice way of mirroring that behavior and showing that you're really adapting to what they are saying, what they're telling you.